Hi there, Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. Welcome to day 81 of our Be a Better You annual challenge. Today we are talking about communication, of course. This entire month we're focusing on communication and that area of the 9-part life framework that I've worked on and worked off of and shared with people since 2021. Prior to that, it was a 7-part life framework that I learned back in the 1980s. I know, I'm that old, been around that long. But back in the 1980s, I learned it from Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins. And it just made sense to me. Back then, my life was kind of chaotic. Kind of chaotic is an understatement, but we all deal with what we get dealt with in this lifetime. And back then it was chaotic. I thought it was chaotic. It's even more chaotic now, which is why it's so important to have some kind of a framework or a model that you use to add a little bit of structure and understanding to your life so that you can create the life you want, not just have to live from day to day. So today we're talking about this life framework with respect to communication. And I kept this little graphic because I was talking to a coaching client of mine years ago now about this life framework and how he was asking questions about how it interacts and why is it important. And I think we were actually talking about communication because I just added communication and confidence to the model. And we started talking through examples of how every area interacts and impacts every other area and aspect of our life. And that's our action item today, is to think about each of the 9 areas. And I'll show you how I do it. In my journal, my annual challenge journal, because I do one right along with you, I just list off the area that we're focusing on, which is communication, and then all the different areas of the life framework. And as I go about my day, I notice what's actually going on in my life, right? Because that's the most important. So if I am hungry, also known as hangry in my world, because if I get hungry, I get grumpy. I physically feel hungry or tired or anxious or stressed out, I get grouchy, right? And so my communication reflects what I'm feeling. Our communication always reflects what we're feeling. So I want to notice as I go about my day, am I having, did something stressful just happen? Happened yesterday, right? It hasn't happened yet today, but it happened yesterday. And I had to stop and take a deep breath and pay attention to what I was feeling in my body so that I could react in a way that wasn't how I was actually feeling inside, right? Because sometimes we don't want all of our feelings to show. So that's one of the ways that communication and emotions, communication and anxiety, communication and stress interact with one another. And each and every area is impacted by communication. Each and every area of our life is impacted by confidence, by physical. Isn't that interesting that every area is affected by and will impact how we show up in the world by every other area of our life? And I think that's why the life framework is so powerful, because it allows us to self-reflect and say, yeah, sometimes when I'm hungry, I react this way and I communicate in a really bad way. What am I going to do differently besides have a bite of something to prevent myself from doing that? Sometimes just being aware of our natural past tendencies allows us the ability to change and transform them now. So I have a bunch of examples of how physical well-being and communication interact with one another and each of the different areas and aspects of our life. Did a little write-up. It looks like it's a 4-page write-up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I gave an example of, I used the name Quinlan because that's my granddaughter's name. It's just fun to share their stories. And other people don't like me sharing their real stories under their real name. And I get that, right? When you coach and consult people, they don't always want you to tell other people what's going on with them. Actually, they almost never want you to tell, because everybody's journey is a personal journey. So today, the 9 life framework areas, we're going to look at each one of them and ask ourselves, or notice as we go about our day, well, how does how I'm feeling physically impact my ability to communicate, or whether I'll even communicate at all? I know sometimes if I am tired or mentally, tired is physical, but if I'm mentally overloaded or overwhelmed with so much information, I just choose not to participate in conversations or to communicate, because I know that's my best option at the time, is just to work through the stuff I'm working through and then deal with situations and communicate with respect to those situations as appropriate and in a much more appropriate fashion than if I communicate and I'm not feeling particularly awesome in a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationships, etc. area of my life. How many of us, when we're struggling in our relationships, have a really, really hard time communicating? Like pretty much every human being, right? Difficult conversations are called difficult conversations for a reason, because they're challenging, especially when we're struggling in a relationship or when we have to deliver bad news, etc. So that's our action item for today. I like to keep it simple on the weekends so that we can move through it faster, because usually our weekends are packed with all the other things we haven't gotten done yet this week. So wish you an awesome day. If I can help you in any way, please ask. Otherwise, have a great one, and I will, of course, be with you tomorrow.